Okay. Call to order for a Watertown City Council meeting for February 21st of 2023. Please rise while Councilman Shuddy leads us in prayer.
All right, I have a prayer here that Thomas Jefferson prayed at every day of his presidency and every day thereafter. So I thought, just as I pray this prayer, just a reflection on what past leaders prayed when these positions of leading and governing. So, Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech thee that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of thy favor and glad to do thy will. Bless our land with honorable industry, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties, and fashion into one united people the multitude brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endow with the spirit of wisdom those to whom in thy name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to thy law we may show forth thy praise among the nations of the earth. In time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in the day of trouble, suffer not our trust in thee to fail. All of which we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Manager Mack, please call the roll.
Bueller.
Here.
Danforth.
Here.
Holeen.
Here.
Paulson. Shuddy.
Here.
Tupper.
Here.
Billhauer.
Here.
Quorum is established.
Quorum is established. The chair will entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda with one change. We are going to pull item I off of consent and place it at the end of the regular agenda. So with that minor change, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent. Councilman Paulson?
I will recuse myself from item B on the consent agenda.
From item B on consent?
Yes.
Okay. We have a little bit of a spill on some, I think, Diet Coke here. We'll get that situated. Also wanted to announce for anyone who's watching this, we are down a few people tonight. Our city attorney, Lisa Carrico, is on vacation, and our finance officer, Kristen Bobzine, is out due to the weather. And that's not personal feelings, it's the blizzard going on outside. So, but we have a light agenda, and we will be more than capable of doing all of our business tonight. So, motion made by Councilman Tupper. Seconded by Councilman Danforth. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Now is the time for public comments. If anyone is here who would like to say something in front of the city council that is not on the agenda, now is your time to do so. Just looking for someone online because there's not many people here. I don't see anyone, so I'll close public comments. Chair will entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda with item I from consent placed at the end of the regular agenda.
Mayor,
Motion made by Councilman Billhauer. Councilman Paulson?
before we do that, I will recuse myself from A and B as well.
Okay. We need a second. Seconded by Councilman Tupper. Any discussion on that, council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item A is an application for a new retail malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license to Sandbar LLC. Our city manager, Madam Mack, will explain this one to us.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a new application for retail on-off malt beverage and South Dakota Farm wine license to the Sandbar, located at 100 North Lake Drive. And it has been properly noticed, and all of the application materials are in and completed appropriately.
Thank you very much. I will open up a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this item? I'll close the public hearing, open it up for council action. Do I have a motion to approve the application? Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Danforth. Any discussion on this, council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the application. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item B is an application for a transfer of an ownership of a retail liquor license and video lottery license from the North Shore to Sandbar LLC. City Manager Mack, tell us this one.
Thank you, Mayor. You have described it appropriately. This is a transfer of an existing license from North Shore to the Sandbar LLC. All paperwork has been submitted appropriately, and it's been publicly noticed.
Thank you much. I will open up a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this? I'll close the public hearing, open it up for council action. Do I have a motion to approve the application? Motion made by Councilman Schutte. Seconded by Councilman Villauer. Any discussion on this, council? The motion is to approve the transfer. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item C is an application for a transfer of a retail malt beverage and South Dakota Farm wine license and video lottery license from Treasure Chest Casino to RBM1 LLC, doing business as Treasure Chest Casino at the same location. City Manager Mack, please explain this one for us.
Thank you, Mayor. You have described it accurately. All appropriate paperwork has been submitted and is filled out in the right manner, and it was publicly noticed.
Thank you very much. I will open up a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this? I'll close the public hearing, open it up for council action. Do I have a motion to approve the application, or the transfer, sorry? Motion made by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Paulson. Any discussion on this, council? Councilman Paulson.
I guess I have one question, and maybe the police officers here can answer. Did they just fail a compliance check?
I don't know who that is. 212.
Treasure Chest.
It's 212.
Okay, that was my.
So the question was, did this establishment fail a compliance check? And it did not. There were others that did, but we will be taking those up at a different time. So, Councilman Tupper.
That is a transfer of ownership also, I believe.
Yes. Any further discussion, council? The motion is to approve the application for a transfer. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item D is an application for a transfer of an ownership of a retail liquor license and video lottery license from 212 Casino Incorporated to RBM1 LLC, doing business as 212 Casino at the same location. City Manager Mack. Did I explain all of it?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. This is a transfer of ownership of a retail on-sale liquor license and video lottery license, excuse me. It's been publicly noticed. All of the appropriate paperwork is in and is good to go from our end.
Thank you very much. I will open up a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this? I'll close the public hearing and accept a motion to approve the application for a transfer. Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Paulson. Council, any questions or comments? The motion is to approve the application for a transfer. All of those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item E is the second reading of Ordinance 23-01, an amendment to Section 1401 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown regarding the creation of the Watertown Park and Recreation Advisory Board. City Manager Mack, tell us more.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, technically, this is the third reading of this ordinance. We did a first reading at the last meeting to incorporate some of the changes that were discussed the very first time we reviewed this. This is amending the Park Board ordinance to align with the city manager form of government and outline the roles and responsibilities of Park Board members in an advisory capacity. And with that, I will stand by for any questions.
All right, we are up for final action on this ordinance revision, so the chair will entertain a motion to approve this. Motion made by Councilman Schutte, seconded by Councilman Villauer. Now open it up for discussion. Council? Councilman Tupper?
Mayor, have all the board
appointments been made then, or do we still have open appointments?
We had several of them filled, and then we had a couple more that have announced that they would no longer like to be on. So
Thank you.
we will be filling those, I believe, by the first meeting in March, because we really want to have a meeting in March.
Yeah, he got appointed at
So-
the last meeting.
Any further discussion? Motion is to approve the ordinance amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item F is an approval of Resolution 23-06 requesting the South Dakota Department of Transportation to hire Civil Design Incorporated to perform the 2023 bridge inspection services for the city of Watertown. Public Works Director Heath Von Eye, please explain this one for us.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a pretty routine contract that we exercise annually through the state's, the federal mandate to get federal funding on any of our structures. We're required to inspect them on a 2-year basis. And so we take the 10 structures we have throughout our community that we're responsible for, and we divide those out and do 5 each year and perform bridge inspections every year. There's a pre-selected list, a predetermined list of licensed engineers that are eligible to perform these inspections that are screened by the South Dakota DOT. And then it's the communities, the municipalities' responsibility to select one of those consultants to perform those inspections. The overall cost is usually only about $6,000 to inspect all 5 structures annually. Of that, the city only pays about 20% of that cost. So $1,000 to $1,200 is our annual cost for this. So again, it's a pretty routine item. We do have 5 structures in the queue for this coming bridge inspection year, and with that, I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve this resolution. Motion made by Councilman Paulson, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Questions or comments, Council? Councilman Villauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just out of curiosity, I see one of our county commissioners in the audience. Do the counties and the townships have the same cycle relative to inspection of their bridges? Okay. That was a yes, so. Thanks, Troy.
Any further questions or comments? The motion is to approve the resolution. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item G is an approval of the bid award for the 2023 Pavement Management Program Schedule C to Dunnick Incorporated in the amount of roughly $1,900,000 pending Watertown Municipal Utilities Board approval. Public Works Director Heath Von Eye, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. The reason this has pending Watertown Municipal Utility Board approval is because we're partnering with them on this contract. They have water main utility work to be done in conjunction with our street repairs, street construction efforts that are going on in this string of streets included in this project. The streets that are included in this are, I had a map here, but I'm unable to share it here this evening. They're on listed in the background there. They include 5th Avenue Southeast, 7th Avenue Northeast, 8th Avenue Southeast, and 16th Avenue Northwest. We compiled the street design for the streets that needed full reconstruct. This would be full removal of the surfacing, some removal of the base course if any exists. Some of these roads might not have any base course underneath it. Subgrade prep, and then rebuilding with appropriate base course thickness and paving thickness. So those 4 streets would get worked on in here out of this bid. And the bid was competitive. We received 2 bids. They were competitive bids within a close margin of one another. And they were only they were a little bit higher than the engineer's estimate, but only 3% higher. And the other fact I was going to point out here, the city's portion of that 1.9 overall contract is only a little over 1.7 million. The other $200,000 is being picked up by municipal utilities for their work under their separate bid schedule. So we'll track their work under that bid schedule, and we'll track the city's work under our bid schedule, and they'll be billed and paid for accordingly between the 2 entities.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve this bid award. Motion made by Councilman Shetty. We'll give the second to Councilman Tupper. Questions and comments, Council? Councilman Danforth.
Thank you, Mayor. Heath, help me out here. I know we've asked this question before in previous times that we've looked at, but in a contract or in a bid like this, they always list mobilization. It's a significant number. It's something where 7-8% of the total project, something like that. What is that? It seems like it's always there, but I look at mobilization and say, okay, what's it cost me to get equipment, people there, and get started? Apparently, that's not what it is. So, what does that number represent to us, and what are we getting for that number?
So mobilization is intended for exactly how you described it, Councilman Danforth, is that's the cost the contractor pays to mobilize to the site and from the site in some cases, or within the project limits. Like in this case, we've got streets, throughout town that we're working on. So mobilization could include all those things. What does it cost to get their crews and equipment here, to move them, from one part of town to the other, things of that nature. However, in the bidding world, mobilization can absorb any cost the contractor really wants to put in there. It's a number that's, I'll say, more or less guaranteed to the contractor. So some contractors might cut another line item a little light and absorb it in their mobilization for whatever financial reason they want to. And it's really, outside the purview of the city to control how they do that or where they put those numbers. But the intent behind it is just how you described. What's it cost to get your equipment and crews here to do the work? But it becomes a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a shell game. The numbers are still what the numbers are. So whether they put it up into mobilization or further down in the bid and one of the other bid items, it's still the same number. So it's all on how that contractor wants to present their number through their bid. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Councilman Danforth?
Well, it does. I look at this and I'm not real sure. We got one from Minnesota that has a presence here, and we got one from Millbank that has a presence here, and it just seemed like a lot of money. I personally would like to know where my real costs are, and not the shell game, but we don't have that latitude to define where those numbers are, so I'm good.
Councilman Shetty.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it's potentially here for Public Works Director Von I. If my math is correct, it's possibly like 240,000 per city block, I believe. I may be off. My numbers are, one of them was like a half block, so I'm not sure. But I'm just curious how that compares to previous years. I'm just curious if there's how much of an uptick there is, and maybe that's tough to answer at this moment, but how much of an uptick is there from previous years to now with the cost of everything? And then when we look at with that question, then when we look at the study we did, and that shows how many dollars we spend on streets, and this is how much we can get done. Well, if those dollars, if it's gone a fair amount up, then we don't get as much for our dollar. So then we've got to adjust how much we invest. And so I was just curious how it is in comparison to previous years when we look at what we get done for $200,000, how many city blocks, kind of a thing. Director Von I?
Yeah, I would say that, in the recent past, these numbers are pretty comparable. That's why the engineer's estimate was pretty close to what the bids were. How much those are upticked from 5 years ago, I don't have that information right here in front of me, but obviously they have grown in the last few years, those costs have. Then as far as the pavement management study and how we implement that study based on those recommended thresholds or targets of dollars to spend per year in order to improve your pavement condition index over those years. I'd say we're still on pretty good track to keep seeing improvement, but you are right, we do need to offset those annual increases as time goes on because the study doesn't account for that growth on an annual basis. So something we have to be sensitive to when we're budgeting and implementing the CIP each year.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilman Villauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Heath, just for the sake of people that might be tuning into this, this is for some major projects around town. We also, at some point throughout the year, will be doing some repair work on some stretches of streets and obviously the pothole filling. So that'll be over and above what we have here, correct?
Correct. We also just bid the mill and overlay project, which will be coming forward to the council here soon. Of course, that covers a good number of streets in town as well, but those streets that are in better condition where we can just mill off the top couple inches of asphalt and repave them. These are the worst of them that had to be fully reconstructed, so we lumped all these together into one contract. But then we also have the large patching contract, the miscellaneous concrete repair contract, which can include curb and gutter, valley gutter, things of that nature. And so we'll continue to bring those contracts forward as they get bid.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I just want to, I was part of the losing bid on this, which we accept. And the reason I'm bringing this up is these numbers may be slightly higher, like 3% higher than the engineer's estimate, but going forward, I would almost suggest start to look at big projects having completion dates maybe beyond what you normally would consider. We're seeing in the construction world, subcontractors specifically are so overbooked right now that getting work done going forward is going to be really, really hard. We ran into it last year on our own, and we're not the only contractor that did. Just everyone's becoming overbooked with all the work out there, and with all this new money coming out for grants and everything like that, it's not going to stop. So I just want to point it out that what you'll start to see is inflated numbers because people are busy, or really, really high numbers because you can't get a bid from a subcontractor, and then you end up having some random person from far away come over and do work because us specifically, we're struggling to get concrete numbers. And it just becomes difficult putting bids together with what we already have on the books and then going forward. So just something to look at going forward. I know the utilities mentioned that they're going to put out a bid later this fall, and we'll have over a year, or whoever wins it will have over a year to complete it. So the contractor has the ability just to kind of fit it into their schedule. And I'm not saying that's always the right way either, but it's just something to look at going forward.
Councilman Paulson, would you like either City Manager Mack or Director Von Eye to address that? I mean, because it's a fair question as far as does it throw off the city's plans to extend a contract at all?
I would say most of these pavement management projects in their completion dates are all hinged and linked to the weather. You know, obviously we can't be paving asphalt in freezing temperatures, otherwise we compromise the work that we've done, and a lot of expense goes to waste. So really, and I don't know if this one was set earlier than that, I wouldn't know without referring to Justin online, but I'm assuming this had a completion date sometime in the fall like we normally do, because then we're otherwise creeping up against cold weather asphalt paving, which isn't allowable per the DOT specs, which is what we adopt for our asphalt paving standards. So that's probably the main driver, I would say, that comes into play when we're setting the deadlines for these projects.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the bid award. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item H is a council approval of resolution adopting the Cottington County Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan for 2023 to 2028. Public Works Director Von Eye, please explain this one to us.
Thank you, Mayor. So you've heard off and on a little bit about this pre-disaster mitigation plan. We've had representatives from First District here several months ago as they were working through an upgrade to the plan. And They've since now compiled a final draft. Peyton has been working on that with First District. And in order for Cottington County to successfully pass a pre-disaster mitigation plan, each community in the county also has to accept and pass it. And what this plan does, in a real encapsulated summary here, is it essentially makes the county and those municipalities within it eligible for hazard and disaster mitigation funding at the state and federal levels. So it's a formality that's used in that capacity, and it's before the council tonight for your formal adoption of it in order for it to be set in place. It is a 5-year plan, so this one would run from 2023 through 2028. And I'll reference the Community Development Manager, Brandy Hanton, who's here with us tonight, and her and I stand by for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. We might have questions, but first we will take a motion to approve the resolution. Motion made by Councilman Schutte, seconded by Councilman Paulson. Questions or comments, Council? There are none, so the motion is to approve the resolution. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item I is an approval to terminate the professional services agreement with Volair Aviation Consulting effective February 28th, 2023. Public Works Director Von Eye, please explain the background here.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start out my comments that this was discussed at the most recent airport board meeting on February 13th and came as a unanimous recommendation from them to go ahead and to enter into this mutual termination agreement with Volair. Stepping back prior to that, we hired Volair Aviation Consulting back in June of 2022 in order to carry out 2 different functions for us at the airport. One of them is for air service development, and the other for general marketing of our airport services. And those 2 functions are, we were fortunate to have one company performing both those functions, and that's why one of the reasons we decided to go with Volair at the time. But fast forward a few months, like with any business contract, there's often got to be good synergy, good movement in the right direction for both parties to want to continue under such contracts. And we've mutually agreed that we're just not feeling that synergy and would like to terminate the contract at this time as the contract allows, as per the clause within it. And so after discussions with the folks at Volair, professional positive discussions, we've decided to part ways, and the airport board has agreed to that as well. And our next steps of action, if this were approved tonight, is that we would move forward and continue discussions with the other proposers that we received back last year in June of 22 and entertain their interest in providing air service development and marketing services for the airport.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the termination of the agreement. Motion made by Councilman Villauer, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Any questions or comments, Council? Councilman Villauer.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'll just piggyback on what Public Works Director Von Eye had to say. I was at that airport board meeting. It was a mutual parting the ways. There's no doubt, no secret that our numbers have tailed off in recent months for a variety of factors. Not to put the blame on Volair necessarily, but it's critical that with some of the downturn in the numbers, we had 751 boardings last month, which was one of the lower months that we've had for quite some time. But so it's critical that when we go through a phase like this, that we have somebody that we can turn to kind of kickstart the whole process again and get our numbers up. So I think the thought was that, especially with Volair's mutual consent, that it was time to look elsewhere, see what we can do as far as maybe improving some numbers.
Thank you. Councilman Danforth.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to throw it all out, and then people can answer accordingly. But it's my understanding prior to Volair, the service provider we had for this, maybe we weren't as happy with the results as what we had hoped to be. But a couple of questions. Like, first of all, I'm not really sure I know what the marketing aspects is in regards to, but if somebody could help me out with, what does air service development mean in our regard to what we're looking for? How do we measure their performance? This is now our second one that I'm aware of in using for this type of service. And at least there's some indication that we've never been completely thrilled with any of the service that's been provided. So how do we measure that? What's our expectation? You know, what is air service development? How do we measure their performance?
We will let City Manager Mack answer that one.
Thank you, Mayor. The prior consultant that we used was for marketing services only. It was not air service development. And they did submit a proposal when we vetted the other consultants, and they just didn't score as high. It wasn't for any past work that they'd done. That's my understanding. We had a great relationship with them. We found someone who could provide both services. Heath can probably provide a more detailed explanation, but air service development is working directly with the airlines to better meet customer needs. So working to get interline agreements in place, positioning at gates, things like that. So working directly with the airline, and then the marketing piece is just that. It's marketing our air service out of Watertown.
Director Von Eye, anything to add?
No, those were the few notes I was going to mention. You know, as far as the air service development goes, it's a little deeper dive than just throwing our name out there on a marketing basis or an ad campaign. It's working with the airline on what markets they're in, which regional or international airports we have connection to, how well they're connected there, whether it be their gate location, whether it be their interline agreements that they have with the other airlines, helping and facilitating that our current airline with those kinds of things, sometimes pressing them or impressing upon them the ideas of the community that we would see a benefit to us. Take the gate location at Chicago right now, it's not ideal, so we've been working with our consultant to find a solution to that with the airline. The other things that come into play there, pricing, looking at them on how their pricing compares to other airports within the region, leakage studies that the consultant performs to show where our potential radius of customers are otherwise going to instead of coming to Watertown, and the reasons behind why they might be going to those other airports. All those things are compiled, all fall into that air service development subject, if that helps.
Councilman Danforth, any follow-up?
In the areas, Heath, that you mentioned, have we gotten good response from them, you know, on the leakage reports, you know, the analysis and reporting? Have we made headway on the gate selection? I have heard that scenario as well in the Chicago area as an item that people are concerned with, especially when it's cold and winter outside. But how do we measure their progress then? I mean, I don't care who it is, whether it's Valair or anybody else. How do we measure their progress to know that they're bringing the value you want and need and expect to our airport and our service here?
Yeah, so as far as measurability, I'd have to go back and look at the Valair contract, but I believe the contract has some subjective language in it. It's not, some objective language. It's not all subjective. What those objective criteria are, I don't know off the top of my head, but it'd be, like Councilman Vilhauer just cited, what are our emplanements doing? Just looking at, the proof being in the pudding was what is the result of air traffic in our community based on these efforts we're putting forward. And if we see emplanements as one indicator of many, if we see emplanements dropping or dwindling, that could be of concern and could mean that these efforts, which are substantial, they don't come inexpensively, might not be performing quite like we'd like them to be. Again, emplanements is just one marker, but the success in some of those other efforts or initiatives like gate relocation and interline agreements, and it's not all on the consultant to make that happen, but it's definitely helpful when they're doing everything they can, knowing the connections that they have in that airline industry on helping connect those dots with our current air service provider. So, you know, again, it's like any business transaction. It's a dance. It's you got to have that synergy there, and it just every step of the way, it just hasn't been feeling. We haven't been feeling that synergy with Volair. And going back a step to ArcStar, who was primarily a marketing firm for us. It's not that we weren't dissatisfied with their services. It was more we should explore what else is out there. We'd been with them for some time. They're actually on our short list to call back and entertain revisiting discussions with them again. So, which we'd be more than happy to do. And we also now have a list of a few other consultants that are at our disposal to also contact. And again, the effort a year ago was to see what is out there, what kind of consultants provide these services, and who could best provide that functionality to the Watertown Regional Airport.
Councilman Bueller, then Paulson, then Vilhauer. Councilman Bueller?
Thank you. You know, just a comment. I recall when we were courting these folks some time ago, a couple of years ago, whatever it was. You know, one of the things they brought to the table was a lot of relationships with key people throughout the airline industry. That was a big part of it. And they had a lot of synergy with a lot of marketing groups that worked within those airlines. You know, and they did claim they could do a lot of things for us. I don't know that many of those came to fruition, but I think that was one of the key things that appealed to us to take them on at that time.
Councilman Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my question is, I know you said we plan to hold select interviews with possibly resulting in two separate contracts for the air service development and marketing services. But where does that put us right now? And the reason I'm asking that is because I don't mean this to sound doom and gloomy, but this I would classify as a mistake. Not one that we could have avoided. I think we made the right decision at the time, but I don't think we can really afford that mistake again with our numbers the way they are. We have to get those back up, and that's why I'm asking, where do we stand right now? How do we move forward in getting the right people?
City Manager Mack?
Well, I think the airport board has a good handle on what the needs are for the airport, and Heath has laid out an appropriate process to find the right people. One thing that, you know, the air service development services are new to us, so you don't really know what to expect until you're in that environment. And while at the time we thought someone who could do both was the kind of the cat's meow, maybe it's not. Maybe we need to have someone focused on air service and someone focused on marketing. And just a reminder, these are grant-funded contracts through the Governor's Office of Economic Development. So we do have a window of opportunity to use the funding, and so we do want to make sure we get it right.
Councilman Paulson, the floor is yours. Councilman Vilhauer?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess kind of a variation of what Councilman Paulson just asked. Okay, this contract terminates now at the end of February. It's going to take some time now for the airport board to do their due diligence and, interview and whatnot. What do we do in the meantime? There's going to be several months of gap in there, I'm guessing. What do we do in the meantime?
One of the plans, Councilman Vilhauer, is that we would do our own internal marketing, and really that's the component we would carry on through this gap here is the marketing component. We have already begun discussions with some of the other proposers, both of which that we've talked to are very interested in continuing discussions with us. One point of clarity I'll make, one of those companies does house both these services within their company, so it's not a given that we'll have two separate companies at this point. It just depends on how those interviews pan out. But we have begun those discussions. We hope to turn them around as soon as we can because we want to minimize that gap as much as we can.
Any further questions? All right, the motion is to approve the termination of the agreement. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Is there any old business? Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I know this is a sore subject, and I know you just sent out an email about it. And maybe if you could plug your ears out there. I'm going to bring up smoke shacks very briefly, and that's because I have received and I have witnessed several bars utilizing rooms as smoke shacks that are attached to their buildings. And I'm not going to tattle on any. That's not the intent of this. I think it's time for that discussion to give our police officers the direction that's necessary, because I know the complaint is coming. I know they're going to do their compliance checks, and I know there's going to be fines given out. 100% there is, because I've seen it, and they're actively doing it. So I know it's not a discussion we want to have, but I think we need to just get a solution so we can put it to bed.
Any further old business? Any new business? Any liaison member reports? Any announcements? Councilman Vilhauer.
I would like to wish my bride, Darla, happy birthday today.
Councilman Bueller, do you also wish to? Yeah, will you sing for Darla?
I should have brought this up in newer and or old business. I don't know where it fits in, but where are we with Interline? Are we kind of keeping on that whole thing with the airport? Just to kind of go back for a moment, if I could. I mean, I hope there's somebody that's in their ear all the time about trying to get that interlining done wherever possible.
Yes, we continue to work regularly with Denver Air on the interline agreements. They work on their own behalf on those. We do have one with American and United, or they have one with American and United already. So it's Delta that they continue to work on, and it's everyone's well aware that it's a desire and a need, and we just keep pushing it forward.
I know from our perspective it can be frustrating because we really, as a city, we don't have power over the FAA, we don't have power over O'Hare International or Denver International, and the rules when it comes to flying are myriad and complicated. So, Councilman Tupper?
Just a quick question while we're on that subject. When do we expect to hear from the FAA on a new contract?
City Manager?
It's about 60 to 90 days after we submit a recommendation is when they have traditionally been getting back to us. But contract doesn't end until the end of June.
Okay, thank you.
But we will know the results before the contract expires, probably.
Sure hope so.
Okay. Any further announcements? There's no reason to go into executive session tonight. Therefore, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Schutte. Any conversation on that? Hearing none, the motion is to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Good night, and God bless you, Watertown.